Okay, it being 7 o'clock, I will call the meeting of the Select Board of Tuesday, February 4th, 2025 to order. Note this meeting is a remote by Zoom only. The meeting is being televised, streamed, or recorded by Bourne TV. If anyone in the audience is recording or videotaping, they need to acknowledge it at this time.
I am. It's streaming.
Jamie Perkins from Bourne Enterprise is recording. Use of flash photography during select board meetings is prohibited. If anyone from the public wishes to access the meeting, they can do so by calling the conference line 1-929-205-6099. The Zoom meeting ID is 897-1229-3538, and the password is all uppercase BOURNE. The Zoom chat will not be monitored. Participants who wish to speak must raise the hand icon until the chair asks them to unmute. All items within the meeting agenda are subject to deliberation and votes. We are now in open session. The first item is report out from the executive session, and there is no further update at this time. Community shout out and recognition. Does anyone have any on the board have any community shout out or recognition? I have to congratulate the boys, Bourne High School boys hockey team for winning the Canal Cup in overtime. So it was a great job.
4 overtimes.
In the 4th overtime, yeah. It's pretty amazing. Okay. Anybody else? All right, then. Public comment on non-agenda items. Okay, so we have Bob Dwyer's here with public comment. I have to read my spiel. Public comments are allowed for up to a total of 12 minutes at the beginning of each meeting. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes per comment. Board members are unable to respond due to posting requirements of the open meeting law. So, Mr. Dwyer, you may speak.
Good evening, members of the Select Board and anybody else listening on TV or Zoom. First, I'm going to speak on behalf of the Pecasset Village Foundation. I'm a board member of the foundation, and our president, Paul Forsberg, should be making this first presentation. He's unavoidably detained. We got some great news last week. We got news through the Public Archaeology Lab, the town's contractor, that our application for membership or for listing on the National Register of Historic Places for the Pecasset Community Building, the original home of the Travelers Club, was approved last week. So this is the result of obviously the work of our committee, but also a lot of input from the town. I want to thank the Community Preservation Committee for funding PAL to do the application process. And secondly, for a series of grants that allowed us to restore the building to its original 1912 look. Sometime at our annual meeting in June, we'll be unveiling the National Register plaque on the building, and you certainly will all be invited. I'd also like to recognize the Bourne Historical Commission, who's been active in supporting this and shepherding this through the Mass Historical Commission, another jump that we had to get through. In continuing our public service in terms of providing a venue for important meetings, I'll invite everybody to a meeting next Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock, conflicting with your select board. That's going to be chaired by Mr. Vieira, the state representative for the area, regarding public comments about the closing of the state hospital in Pecasset. You're all invited, 7 p.m., 314
It's
Barlow's
actually
Landing
6
Road.
p.m. I think it's 6 p.m., Bob.
Oh, okay.
It's 6 to 7:30 was the availability of the legislators. So it's 6 o'clock. And the select board does have a conflicting meeting. So we may make a token appearance at the beginning, but yeah, we can't be two places at once.
Understood.
Thank you.
in any case, you are all welcome, and many thanks to all of the town staff and all of the citizens who did this, and to the voters in Bourne who approved those fundings for the CPC grants at town meetings. Many thanks to all.
Hey,
Now, if
Bob,
I may,
can you do
Go
me a
ahead.
favor? There was a letter that was sent to the select board, but it was only the cover letter. And there was supposed to be an attachment that had described the project that wasn't included. So it did say that the Travelers Club was approved, but I was concerned about people getting confused about what the Travelers Club was. So if you could forward to Kathleen any other information so we can actually get it in our correspondence, that would be great.
I sure will. I'll try to find the full package. The other thing is I just sent a press release to the local media. So there's a one-pager out there. I will actually do an all select board mailing to send that out so that it's available to everybody.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
And again, thanks. The second item I need to talk to you about is of some urgency. This is just a heads up for some very active movement regarding cable and internet funding for Bourne. As you know, the Mass Broadband Coalition has been identifying underserved and unserved residences across the state to determine eligibility for $145 million in broadband funding. Residents in Bourne put in a lot of effort in testing and other activities, and we were able to identify and MBI validated almost 1,200 locations in Bourne that are eligible for this grant funding, including a whole census block that is census block group, I guess, that is west of Shore Road. But the grant process continues to be complex. You'll recall that in 2023, the select board sent letters of support to Verizon and Comcast for their grant applications for the first round of funding called GAP 1. Both letters specified conditions that the companies serve the entire town. Further, the letter to Comcast included a lot of conditions about specific hardware upgrades and other technical improvements that absolutely would be needed. Neither company got a GAP 1 grant, but both companies reapplied for funds second quarter of last year using the same letters of support. We just learned that Comcast has been awarded a small grant of $37,000 to serve a handful of residences that seem to be located very near Comcast's existing coax cable network. This is going to be finalized very soon by MBI's board of directors, probably around mid-February. The problem with their grant is that they classified over 1,000 locations in Bourne as ineligible for GAP funding for various reasons. And that is even contrary to the listing of those sites on MBI's own files and FCC maps. SciTac believes that this violates the condition that you specified in your support letter. Accordingly, at the next SciTac meeting this Thursday morning, I will be entertaining a motion that the SciTac strongly urges you, the select board, to send a letter to Comcast and MBI and withdraw this support letter. If the motion passes, we'll submit a draft transmittal letter to you later Thursday for consideration at the next possible select board agenda. And I urge you to put it on the meeting for the 11th. The urgency here is that this next big funding block BEAD, we thought was going to be put out to bid soon. However, MBI informed us a week or so ago that they've decided to not offer any BEAD funding by competitive bidding from companies. Instead, they were just going to add BEAD funds to the winners of the GAP grants. In this case, that's adding it to Comcast GAP $37,000 award. For Bourne, short-circuiting the competitive bidding means that approximately 5 to 8 million in BEAD funding that, by our estimate, will go directly to Comcast, meaning that Bourne will be stuck with internet over coax cable for decades to come. Withdrawal of the support letter, I think, will pause or maybe stop this unfair no-bid sidestepping of MBI's and the FCC's own published grant procedures. Again, hope we can put this on the agenda for next week. End of comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none. Next item on the agenda is discussion of the transfer of 90 Adams Street to the town of Bourne from the Sagamore Booster Club, including discussing deterring concerning back taxes. And then after that, if we continue the process for disposing of the property. So there has been some ongoing discussion with the Sagamore Booster Club about getting the paperwork signed. And there was a particular question raised about the taxes that are owed on the property and what's going to happen if Bourne becomes the owner to these outstanding taxes. So I'm not sure, Marlene, if you want to speak first, if you want Brian to speak, kind of explain where we are in this negotiation. And
I'll defer to Brian.
okay, Brian.
Fair enough. It's less a negotiation, more just kind of problem solving. Just to make sure everybody's aware, 90 Adams is a property that the town actually deeded out to Sagamore Boosters in 1957. And the deed itself has either a reverter or restriction. I'm not really, the language is kind of old, but in either event, it goes back to the town for nominal consideration of $1 when the Sagamore Boosters are done with it. Today, there's basically one man left standing in Sagamore Boosters. The organization is essentially wound down, has no assets, it's not filing with the state, and they want to give the property back. And so we have worked through sort of how that transfer works as a matter of property law. We've sent a draft deed, and the question was asked of us, well, back in 2024, since the organization wasn't really around anymore, the town stopped treating it as a nonprofit because it wasn't being used for nonprofit purposes. And so we actually assessed taxes in fiscal 2024. The request to us was whether or not we could waive taxes. It's a perfectly reasonable request by the individual who made it, the remaining president of the Sagamore Boosters, but it's a little more complicated for us. So what I'm going to do is I've spoken now with the treasurer collector and the director of assessing and sort of thought about this a little bit. I'm going to give you guys two options tonight as to how we can handle this. So the first option, it's the easy one, but it means we don't get the property back. It's within the select board's authority to say, we're kind of done with this. We don't want the property to revert to the town. The Sagamore Boosters can do with it as they please. That would mean that the Sagamore Boosters would probably go off and sell the property in the open market. The proceeds for that would likely have to, through the doctrine of see pray, be applied to some similar charitable purpose. We would not get the proceeds in that. Even if the Sagamore Boosters sold it, we really can't use them as an agent of the town to dispose of the property without going through procurement or something like that, where we'd be in violation of law. So that's option one, fairly easy. We don't end up getting the property. Option two, after thinking through it, is that we can probably get the property. A little more work involved. I don't think that there's too much. And it would really require two things. So the first thing would be, as to 2025 taxes, we would just ask the president to file an abatement request on the taxes that are currently owed. I spoke with the director of assessing. We're pretty confident that the board of assessors would allow that abatement, given that we're working on a sale to the town. And that would very cleanly and easily take care of the assessment for this fiscal year. Fiscal 2024, a little bit of a tougher nut to crack. As I kind of alluded, as we all know, property taxes are like the backbone of municipal finance, and it's subject to a lot of general laws, none of which allow us to just kind of waive taxes. So what I would suggest is that, the reality is that if the property transfers to us and there is still an outstanding tax liability, it would probably end up being uncollectible at that point. The assessment runs with the property. The town would own the property. I think that the property taxes owed are around $3,500. Rui wasn't able to give me an exact figure just because of some ongoing IT difficulties. But that's kind of what we're looking at. It's not a huge sum. It's only for one fiscal year. You know, in my opinion, as your town council, it's not a sum that if we couldn't go after the property for it because we'd already have the property, it wouldn't be worth it. You know, and we would in any event be going after the sum against a nonprofit that no longer exists. So, you know, it would essentially, from an accounting perspective, I'm not sure exactly how it would be labeled, but it would essentially be an uncollectible account. And so if we follow that path, we would just ask for the abatement in 2025. And I would ask for the select board to just kind of tell me, since you control litigation, that the town can represent that as to 2024, you know, we wouldn't be seeking to collect on that amount at that point, given that we have the property. And then I could give that assurance to the president. And I think that that would be sort of the best way to sort of resolve that. The town would then get the deed back to the property. And as you know, we already have a town meeting vote to dispose of the property at that point, and you could do with it as you please. So those are your two options. I see that Peter has his hand raised, so I assume that there are questions here.
So before Peter, I just want to say that there was documentation in the packet that was a prior town council's opinion that the reverter clause had expired after 30 years. And so there was no requirement that the property revert to the town of Bourne. So I have had a phone call with the representative, Mark, the representative of the prior owners, and he really wants to get the property sold. So that's his you know, that's his concern, but he doesn't want to have any personal liability for taxes. He wants it to be done. So that's kind of where we are. And that's why I put it on this agenda, so that we could make a determination about how we want to proceed. So, okay, Peter.
All right. So when we talked about taking the property back, we looked into using this property for affordable housing. With that in mind, if we do decide to take the property and then we turn it over to the Affordable Housing Trust, which is a separate entity, are they going to be required to make whole of $3,500 on those taxes, or would it still be considered uncollectible if the trust ultimately acquires it?
That's something we can work through if we take it. It's not a discussion I've had with the treasurer collector yet, but we could probably just sort of manage the accounting before we made that transfer if we had to, or something like that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's really just figuring out how we handle the process, because I think we all agree that this is, you know, it's the right thing. It's the right way to go about it. But I think we can sort of handle taking care of those accounts before we do that.
So I'm just going to have a follow-up. I think that there are a couple parties interested in actually purchasing the property. They're interested in putting, you know, housing on the property. So I guess the question is whether the town wants to get involved in this. I think there were some questions on the housing's part about whether they wanted to even do the property because of the condition of the property and what was there. So I think that there are some things that you take over, you know, that we kind of looked at taking the property and auctioning it to, you know, get money for the town. But I mean, at this point, if we just release our ability to take the property, they'll sell it and we'll get the tax money. And then we will get the tax money. So I don't know what the will of the board is. I'm inclined to let them sell it and let it go. But
Just to chime in for a minute too, if it's at all helpful. The chair did refer to the opinion of prior town council. I actually agree with that. I think that if we decide to take the property, we can do that. I mean, the parties can agree to that, but you know, whether it's a reverter or a restriction, it's either 30 or 50 years under the statutes, and either way, that's long since gone. So we're not surrendering an interest in real estate such that we would not be in arguable compliance with some law if you take option one.
Any other thoughts from select board members?
Yes, I think we owe it to the Affordable Housing Trust to see what they want to do, because that's what's the premise when we started looking into this property a while ago. And I was directed by the board to go to the Affordable Housing Trust as your member, and they did express interest in the property. I mean, we have precedent where we've given the Affordable Housing Trust town-owned property, and they have cleaned it up and developed it and turned it back over and sell it off as a deeded affordable unit, and so it's one more affordable unit on the rolls, and that property has potential for for multi units. I understand if we walk away from it and we put it up for auction, that yes, we'll ultimately get the tax revenue out of it, which is probably better financially. But sometimes it isn't all about money. We're doing our part for affordable housing and helping someone that needs it. And I don't know. I mean, I'm in a quandary. I'm in a quandary because I can see benefits on both sides of the aisle.
Anne Marie?
Sure. And I've gone back and forth on this too. Part of me just wants to, wash the town's hands of it and allow the club to sell the property. Brian, did you say that they would not profit from it, that they would have to then donate in some way the monies from the sale of the property? Is that what I understood?
That would be my expectation. When you wind down a nonprofit, individuals get to keep the proceeds for themselves. The deed is
Right.
owned by the old organization, and like I said, there's a doctrine in the law called CPRES, CY space PRES, which essentially means that when you wind down a nonprofit, you transfer its assets to like the next closest, best use of the funds that would be in the spirit of what the nonprofit was doing.
Mhm.
So I haven't looked at this, but my expectation would be is that these funds would go to something that would have a public purpose to it. It's not going to enrich an individual or anything like that.
Okay. And then
Before
You
we
know-
go on to the next question, I don't have any documentation of this, but in my conversations, you said it was going to the scholarship funds for Bourne High School and Upper Cape Tech.
okay. And the other thing, going back and forth with affordable housing, and well, we have, several opportunities in the works right now for affordable housing, but our town also needs to, and yes, we are desperate for a lot of affordable housing across Cape Cod, but we're also in need of single family first time home buyers as well. And we can't forget about those individuals who are trying to, invest in a single family home in our community. And I think that's important too to keep in mind. And it's not just all about affordable. And believe me, we are very involved with several projects, in trying to get across the finish line to allow, families to afford rental properties, et cetera. But we do have several in the works. And I think perhaps, this property is selling to someone that maybe has that in mind as well. I think is just as important too. And that opportunity probably, would happen if we allowed the club to sell it.
Right, Melissa?
Yeah, I think I'll just kind of piggyback off everything everyone else said. And, the property, it's sort of sentimental to me because it's been there for so many years. So I obviously would have loved to have seen the town be able to do something with it. And it is, as Peter, mentioned, it's a good location, it's a good space. But at the same time, um, we don't want any further burden for the town. Brian, just real quickly, so we've had to deal with this recently, and I was under the assumption that when a nonprofit dissolves in any way, that the funds, any of the assets that remain to that nonprofit organization have to go to a like organization, because we had to deal with this from a church corporation and a spiritual entity. They're not the same. So I'm just curious, would it be even be able to go to the Bourne schools as they had wished? Because as MJ had said, their intention was to donate it to someone else, but I'm not sure if the corporate laws allow that. So I guess that's another story. I'm not an attorney, but I'm just curious how strict that like organization might be.
I mean, it's a fact intensive thing. I'd really have to know a little bit more about the organization and look at it. And it is all regulated. There is a nonprofits division at the Office of the Attorney General that's typically involved in this. Yeah, when I say like a similar public purpose, that's essentially what I mean is like a like organization, or if there's not a like organization, a similar public purpose. It really varies depending on the circumstances. So I mean, I can't opine on whether or not where these funds would go, but I think I'm pretty confident in saying generally that it's going to go to something that benefits the public, and it's not, just going to go to some individual's bank account. And certainly in my discussions with this individual in question, I have no doubt that he's trying to do his best. He seems like a stand-up guy who's, really trying to do right by winding this up. And, he's the only guy left standing. So I think he's ready to be done with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that was just it. I mean, I think all the questions were answered. I was just curious on that whole piece. Thank you.
So my concern about the housing, housing partnership or whatever, taking it over is that, they said they were interested, but they also said that they had to do some analysis to say whether they're going to want to take it. I don't know. It's been a couple months. I don't know if they've done anything about looking at the property. I mean,
We're
if
meeting
you take it and
tomorrow.
then they say, well, we don't want it because it's not in a condition that we want. I mean, they have taken tax title before. So, we've transferred tax title before to the housing partnership. So go ahead, Peter.
We're meeting tomorrow, not tomorrow, next Wednesday as the Affordable Housing Trust, so I can ask the question and see if I can get a definitive answer of what if they want to move forward or not, and based on that, then maybe we can hold off just a couple of weeks, if that's all right. But if not, then if you want to dispose of it tonight, the rest of the board does, then so be it. Then I can just tell the trust that we moved on and decide to go in another direction, and that'll be it.
Yeah, I mean, my impression is that that Mark wants to move on. I mean, I said we would discuss it tonight, but either I think we release the property or say that we, give assurance that there wouldn't be any litigation if he still wants to sell it to us. So we have to, whatever. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we do not take the property from the Boosters Club and allow them to dispose of it as they see fit. Or
I'll
allow.
second.
Is there a second? Was there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Anne Marie and a second by Melissa. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, it's a roll call vote. Anne Marie,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
and MJ, yes. All right, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is process for disposing of town-owned property. And that process, while we not be doing it for 90 Adams at this time, it is a process that we will be doing for the old police station, meeting with conservation and the planning board at 7:00 on next Tuesday to have the discussion about disposal of the old police building. So that is the process, and we'll make that step next week. Okay. Next item on the agenda is consent agenda. Appointment of William Gibbons as an alternate member of the Council on Aging for a term ending June 30th, 2026. Donation to the Shellfish Propagation Program from the Pocasset Water Quality Coalition in the amount of $2,000, and donation to the Council on Aging in the amount of $200 from D. Scott. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda items as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second. My mic's off.
Motion by Anne Marie, second by Melissa. Any discussion? Seeing none. Roll call vote. Anne Marie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
MJ votes yes. And thank you very much, the Pocasset Water Quality Coalition. Representative that's here, 500. Okay. Next item is budget review and discussion, proposed FY26 operating enterprise and capital budgets. The first budget is the town clerk's office. Barry Johnson, I believe I saw your phone here, but I'm not seeing it now.
I think he has dropped off. Maybe we can move to the fire, and if Barry comes back, we can.
Okay, he was
Purple.
here, so he probably thought we'd be done by now. Okay, we'll circle back to that if we can. Okay, next is the fire department. Chief Palanzi is here. So if you're using a physical budget book, it's on page 220. And if you're on the web version, it's page 78 of 154.
Good evening, everybody. Dave Palonzi, Fire Chief. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. As MJ said, starting out with the budget on page 220-32, the first section of 5100 series, the personnel services, almost all of these are contractual obligations that showed the increases. 5111, the department head salary, an $8,000 increase for contractual change. The 5112, the supervisors and the administrative secretary, same thing. There was a little bit of contractual change with step increases and things like that. Continuing through the firefighter's salary, 5114, same thing. There's step raises, education raises, and a few other things that bring that up. Out of grade pay, I increased that by 1,500. That kind of keeps in line with previous increases. That's the pay that we pay to firefighters when they act out of grade as a lieutenant for a shift, or a lieutenant that works as a deputy in a temporary promotion for a shift or more. Other than that, the clothing allowance, we actually dropped that. There was a one-time increase that bumped that up. We were able to bring that down and save about $4,000 on that line. 5140 holiday pay, again, that's just contractual increases that bump that up a little bit. And the same with the longevity, 5141. So that section, as I said, everything was increased just based on contractual stuff.
You skipped overtime.
I did, because there's no increase in that.
Right. So, but what was it last year? What was budgeted last year? I mean, we don't get the budgeted amount. We only get the final amount, and I forgot to look it up today.
I can answer that. So the same amount was budgeted last year. We will make an adjustment in the overtime when the groups close with a COLA, so we can buy the same number of hours as we bought last year with the budget.
Okay. And I understand that overtime gets budgeted and then we spend more, but some of that money is for injured on duty that we don't end up paying those salaries. So it all works out in the end, but yeah, I get it. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Next, in the 5200 series, the services, I'll just go through and hit the things that are increasing. We increased the repair and maintenance of heavy trucks in line 5243. did $1,400 in that. And what that covers is the increasing cost of maintaining our heavy duty trucks, the engines, the ladders, and that's any of the maintenance that the DPW can't deal with. The pump testing, ladder testing, hose testing. So those costs continue to go up. So we increased that by 1,400. Next one on page 220-33 in that same series, the 5326 line for county dispatch. We increased that $1,600 based on projections from the sheriff's department for the next year's cost of dispatch. And that's both the per capita fees and the EMD fees as well is included in that. The next line we increased was a little bit $1,000 increase in the communications telephone line, 5340. That's increased. We've increased the number of connected devices that we use. All the ambulances, frontline engines, all have iPads, and that's how we run all of our reporting and response software through. So we've increased the number of devices, so we had to increase that line a little bit. And that's it in the services bracket. Next in the 5400 series, the supplies. The first thing you'll see is our 5500 line, the medical supplies. It looks like that went down, but we ended up moving quite a bit of that from another line, from that line to another. And what the medical supplies is, that is basically all the funds dedicated to running the ambulance service. So everything from medical supplies to training supplies, the software for the patient care reporting that we use, all comes out of that line. What we did was we took 25,000 out of that line, moved it into line 5582 for other subscriptions, and requested an additional $25,000. What we're doing is we currently use 3 different softwares for some of the functions within the department. We're upgrading our RMS to one system that will cover everything, but it's expanding beyond the ambulance. So we wanted to move it to a different line instead of keeping it under the medical supplies. And that will do everything from inspections, pre-incident planning, patient care reporting, scheduling, payroll, everything. And it'll streamline our operations. So that's why there's kind of a significant jump there. But again, half of that came out of another line. Continuing on, that's it in the supply budget. And on page 220-34, under 5700 series, the other charges, we're looking for an additional $5,000 in the 5795 for hazardous waste contract. What that is we were able to secure a Sterilis Solutions machine to grind up and sterilize and dispose of our medical waste. And that extra $5,000 will help cover the annual service agreement for that machine. And that is pretty much my budget in a nutshell. If anyone has any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for the chief? All right. Seeing none, looks like a good budget. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so I see Barry, you've come back, so we're going to go back to, looks like you're on your phone. Can you hear me, Barry?
Hi, I apologize.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
We just went on and came back.
Right, okay. We'll start off with the clerk's budget. First of all,
Okay, so
I want to announce.
wait. So the clerk's budget in the budget book is page 161. And on the web, it is page 61 of 154. Now you may speak.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to announce that our new assistant town clerk, Harriet Draper, started her duties yesterday, and happy to have her aboard. In the clerk's budget, zeroing in on the salary portion of it, prior to that, I want to state there are no capital requests for the clerk's office in 26. The salary portion of the clerk's budget The salaries that are listed are in accordance with the current contractual obligations, and there is an upgrade in one of our administrative assistant positions, and due to the added requirements of our office, and the person referred is holding the current position, has been doing some of the current duties and responsibilities along in that position. In regards to the, excuse me, okay, the RAO stipend is the same as it has been for years. That's for myself for acting as the RAO. And the longevity portion is no longer because Mary Fernandez was the only person in the office that qualified for the longevity. And going into the 5200s, the repair and maintenance of the office equipment, I had requested $800 for the purchase of a more heavy-duty date and timestamp, and it's my understanding that this type of a request may be forwarded in a separate article or in a separate line item for somewhere because it does not reach the capital outlay thresholds. So that's what I had requested for that. And the rest of it, as you can see, is pretty well level funded, and that's the clerk's budget.
Well, any questions from the board on the clerk's budget? Are we doing elections and registration tonight too? Yes. Okay.
Yes, please.
All right.
Okay, for the election registration budget, the one thing that I'll start with is you will notice that in the line item 5120 for 26, I'm requesting 30,000, whereas in the current year we had an appropriation of 95, and the reason for that is in FY26 there's only one election, and that's the May annual town election. The consultants line item is basically the programming that's necessary for the voting machines and for the auto marks. And the printing line item is for the printing communications for printing of the ballot, and again, that's level funded. Again, there are no capital requests for the election registration budget, and as you will notice, we're down $67,000 in our request for FY26, and that is directly related to the fact we only have one election. Everything else is pretty much the same.
Okay. Any questions from the board on elections and registration? Seeing none, I think you're good, Barry. Thank you for coming to our meeting twice.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Okay, next item is the ISWIM budget. Dan Barrett, otherwise known as Lynn Barrett. You, Dan?
Good evening, folks. I'm Dan Barrett, the General Manager of the Integrated Solid Waste Management Facility. I thought it was probably better that you look at a picture of my wife than to look at me. So I put that off for as long as I could. We'll roll through the budgets. I know.
All right, so wait. So in the budget book, page 439, and if you're on the electronic budget, it's page 141 of 154.
Starting off in personnel services, you don't see any increases there. Obviously, that'll come at a later date. Skipping down to purchase of services, electricity. And the big one in that column is 30,000. We changed, we raised up 30,000 for the rental of the trailers. Unfortunately, with another 2 years, we're keeping our fingers crossed, we're going to move out of those trailers. They're not in good shape. They're certainly not worth what we're paying. We renegotiated with those folks. They just took a random shot at raising the rent 20%. We got it down under control a little bit further, but just to cover us, we added 30,000 to that line, but we should be in much better shape. Moving down to legal, 100,000. The reason we took such a large jump there is we will be going for a site assignment on the 12-acre parcel that we've been talking about for the last couple of years. We anticipate legal fees for that to be, according to the last one, will be in the range of we should be able to cover it at 125,000. Some of that will be put onto the project as well. We have to pay for the Board of Health's lawyer as well as our lawyer. So it gets a little pricey. That will come back down, no doubt, next year. Hopefully we get our site assignment. We're moving ahead. Next line is data processing, 7,000. We increased that. We had a little bit of trouble in that line this year, and the town administrator and the finance director have agreed to move. We were paying for some DPW stuff out of that line on the Packers. We're going to put that in the admin fee and get it out of our budget so we can keep operational expenses. Better to track operational expenses and leave the DPW stuff over onto the admin fee. Next on the list will be, I'm kind of skipping over the things that didn't change. You'll notice that in the most of the increases that you'll see in salary are contractual. ISWIM has had a little bit of a changeover, something unusual for us, but we've seen a couple of folks retire over the last 3 or 4 years. I think we had 4. This year we had 2 folks retire. Jimmy Spears with over 45 years split between DPW and ISWIM, and Charles Ruggiero, who retired with over 32 years. Both tough losses for us, but we were able to backfill those positions. So you'll see about a $25,000 to $30,000 decrease in our salary line. And thank
Which salary line is that?
That's in the general. If you look at in the budget page,
C&D, personal services, C&D.
It's spread out through the budget in there, but I'm looking at the enterprise fund sheet at the beginning. Basically, it gives our budget, and you'll see salaries and wages is $2,390,285. It's down 25, almost 26,000 from last year, and that's why I just took the gross shot. So to kind of give you an idea quickly why you're seeing those changes. Onward from there, we're moving on to other contracted services, engineering. We boosted that up 25,000. Again, we're going to go through another site suitability process. You'll see a bit of a jump there when there's a lot of engineering that has to go into that. It's going on right now. So we're going to take that up in 26 as we keep moving through. Then you're going to see next hazardous waste, 5,700 other changes and other charges and expenditures. That's household hazardous waste day. We also take in some hazardous waste in our operations. We place it in the hazardous waste facility and they come in and clean it out. That has continued to increase over the last couple of years. And I was told last year by the now retired director, Calliope Schutz, she said, raise it 30%, it's coming. So that was the reason for that adjustment. We'll see if we can't do a little bit to, that's a hard one to mess with. You just soon see that hazardous material get brought in. Don't want to see people get shy with that. Next line. For a substantial increase is electricity, energy. Again, the facility continues to grow. Last year, we added leachate pump to an electric leachate pump. We upgraded from diesel, which was a little unruly and at times not as reliable. So we put in a brand new electric pump. That's going to drive charges up a little bit on that account. And then on to medical services. I'm sorry, water analysis. That continues to rise. We're looking down at potential for having to test for PFAS in FY26. We don't know if that's going to happen or not, but $5,000 should cover that if it does. And we continue to do additional testing as we move through the permitting process. The next large one will be $21,000 to account 5430 under 5400 supplies. That's where all our operational supplies come out of. For example, tools, welding rods, gasoline for the small pumps, small engine parts. We're going to take that up 21,000. We expect to see a lot more activity, obviously, as we expand. We're doing a lot of the work ourselves internally, so our operational costs will reflect that. We're going to be operating some more equipment, renting some equipment. So we're beefing that account up to account for that. And then we have Public Works and other. We left that one on 5,500. Protective clothing. Obviously, the staff is growing. We were able to add one new position this year, and we're going to need to outfit those folks with protective clothing, the proper protective clothing. And that's about it for what we got. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions from the board on the ISOM budget? Melissa?
I was applauding. It was just a clap.
Well, thank
I
you.
know it looks like a raised hand, but I was just reacting. Thank you, Dan.
Not a problem. Thank you guys for hearing us.
So Dan, it looks like the big other contracted services, like we're up to like, is it 7 million too? Is that what it is? And it's that
Yes, it is.
pretty much the same breakdown as last year, I'm assuming, but
Yes,
we did a big bump up in that last year, I feel like, so it's just holding
exactly.
on.
We added 2.25 million to that line last year. One was for an increase in C&D processing, which is a good thing. Business was up substantially, slowed down a little bit this year, but certainly the lion's share of that was for leachate handling. We found a better outlet. That's when we brought the barge on. Barge is working great. We've got the leachate well under control this year. And I think you'll see, we're already seeing a drop in it. We had obviously dry summer last year that allowed us to get caught up, and it's been fairly dry through the winter. So, but that's the major impact there.
And can you just talk a little bit about what the new site assignment is?
Yeah, the 12-acre parcel, you hear us talk about it. I don't know, I don't have any pictures to show you. I should have probably, but those of you who are familiar with the site, out where the drop-off center is, you notice we've cleared that land to the south, and that is our final expansion. We can't go any further from there. So that was turtle, as a lot of you know, that was eastern box turtle habitat, 12 acres. We spent quite a bit of time and effort in acquiring mitigation land down by the Otis Rotary. It abuts the National Cemetery, and we were able to secure that this year, finish that transaction, which allowed us to go in and clear just in time to, you hear us talk about our expansion. You see us filling on top of the existing landfill. We're going to be there for about another 3 to 4 years. That's phase 9. What has to happen in that 3 to 4 year period is where the office trailers sit right now. Again, for those of you who are familiar with it, south of the current landfill, we have to dig out roughly 300,000 to 400,000 cubic yards of material to get down to liner depth, and then we have to build a liner. While we're doing that, obviously, we have to move the offices out of there. Now that we know our final footprint, we can establish a permanent office. I think for the first time in my career, 40 years, we're actually going to have a building and not a trailer. We're going to put the maintenance garage out there. The gentlemen that are mechanics are doing a fantastic job. They're working at a building that was built in 1967. The roof's caving in, and it's time to move. So we're also thinking ahead. We're probably going to come back. We're going to be back in the spring to talk about what it's going to cost to build a building in the garage and seek approval of that. Also, shortly after that, we're going to have to move the transfer station because that's sitting on the land we're going to dig out for the next phase 7. So we'll be putting a transfer station in that area as well. When we build that transfer station, we're looking toward the future there. It's going to be bigger to handle more material. The goal is as the landfill slows down and closes, we will still be able to offer to Cape Cod a place to transfer trash out.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the board, from the public? Thank you very much for your overview and for your great operation of our integrated solid waste management.
We got a heck of a staff up there, I'll tell you. They do a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Okay. Next is non-departmental budgets and shared costs. I don't know what order you're going to do those in, so you'll have to just tell us where you are.
Sure. So I've actually put together 2 lists. One list is non-departmental budgets with $0 changes. So I can run through those and you can ask, we can just have any discussion or questions about those. And then I have a list of the non-departmental budgets with increases, and we can take those as a separate group if that's okay.
That's fine.
So the non-departmental budgets with $0 changes are town reports, town meeting, select board, legal, Buzzards Bay Action Committee, telephone, gnat fly control, snow and ice, street and traffic lights, Visiting Nurses Association, Historical Commission, Archives Committee, Unemployment Insurance, and the LiUNA Pension Fund.
Any questions on any of those from the board? I have a question on snow and ice snow removal. So we did get in our packet that we're within our 5-year average. So, but I do have a question, and it's actually based on some correspondence that we received that hasn't been put in the packet yet. So there's what's going on with salt and sand? It looks like, and I don't know, the sand was down and the salt is up, and is there a change in how we're doing things? Do you know?
So the town has not used sand in a number of years, and as far as I know, the application hasn't changed. So we are using the same spreaders and applying at the same rate based on the road conditions.
Okay. But I may want to have a follow-up on that, because it appears to me that there's a lot more salt on the roads. And it may be just the conditions that we've had, but I am a little bit concerned about it, especially in some of the areas that are really close to the coast. So we'll maybe have a follow-up on that. It just looked like sand was down and salt was up, and so I wasn't sure about it. I'll put it on a future. Anybody else have any questions on those budgets? Okay. All right. So now we're on non-departmental budgets and share costs with changes, right?
Yes. So we've created a new non-departmental budget with $8,000 in funding for translation and interpretation services for American Sign Language and non-native speaker, non-English speaking services.
Is it in that 900 tab or is it someplace else?
It's in the 100s. It's in general government.
Okay.
We've
Mary Jane,
added,
it's 114-3 in your packet, in the book, if you're doing the book and not the online.
Thank you.
we're adding $4,000 for the independent audit. We're adding $8,000 for postage and copy machine. We're adding $25,000 for vehicle fuel. An additional $500 for special workshop opportunity program. An additional $138,230 for public utilities. An additional $60,000 for FICA. Adding $745,000 for group health insurance. An additional $77,163 for county retirement. An additional $1,108 for special legislation retirement. Adding $98,188 for property and liability insurance. And adding $2,000 for Medicaid reimbursement.
Are there any questions from the board on any of these? So I think the group benefit sounds like a big number, but I think it's only about 2%, right? So that is it like 5?
8.41, I think.
Okay.
The 2% rate increase. Yeah. The change is $745,000. Is that what you're looking at? Yeah. An 8.41% increase.
So, and that is a 1.5% premium increase, plus our second year of adjusting for the change in the out-of-pocket costs for MedX and Medicare RX plans. Plus, we're changing the assumption we use on how many active employees choose family plans.
Okay. So the premium actually increases pretty low, which is
The premium increase is low, but we're making some adjustments on our assumptions to make sure we don't end up short there.
okay. And on the public utilities, is it sort of evenly distributed between whatever and whatever, or that's electric and gas now, right?
Yeah, it's heavier on the electric side. We're expecting more of an increase, especially on the distribution side of our bills.
Okay. Does that increase result in any increase on the revenue side from our recurring revenues, or is that it's just totally separate?
The revenue side for solar is all, we have bumped up our our estimates for solar revenue, but it has nothing, it is not correlated. It's completely
Okay.
separate from the utility cost.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Any other questions on these other non-department and chair costs? Okay, seeing none. The next item is departmental budgets with minimal changes.
So I'm going to just highlight the changes, and then if the board would like, to have a conversation with any of these department heads, we can schedule it for a future meeting. But for the HR department, the only change is a contractual salary. For IT, I'm increasing subscription services and consultants line by $4,785 to account for some escalation in price. Conservation Commission is contractual salaries only. Planning is contractual salaries plus a $200 increase for advertising. Engineering is a contractual salary plus a $400 increase for surveying equipment. Health is contractual salary plus $680 for contracted services for pond monitoring. Council on Aging is contractual salaries plus $200 additional for meetings. Recreation is contractual salaries plus a whopping additional $20 for dues. And then veteran services are contractual salaries only.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
I think at some point I'd like to hear from the COA director and the rec director, because both of those departments have a lot of impact on the community as a whole, for services for those areas. However, if they're gonna go before the finance committee, I can wait for them and watch the presentation that way. And if I have any follow-up questions, I can bring it through you to the town administrator. And maybe I can get my answers that way. That way we're not tying them up for another night.
Do you know the answer to that question, Marlene? Are they going before the finance committee or?
At this point, I plan on only presenting the updates, and unless the finance committee requests that they come and make a presentation, but their budgets don't really lend themselves to a presentation at a meeting.
Okay, I think in the past we've gotten some programmatic descriptions. So it's not just a budgeting thing, it's also what programs, how the programs changed. For the Council on Aging, they sort of did a day program thing, and how's that going? Recreation, a lot of it is, some numbers, things that happen. So maybe we could get some sort of written summary about the department and, what they're doing, and then determine if it's necessary to bring them in.
We can certainly do a departmental update.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. I mean, I think those are important, departments for people. So it's good to have a departmental update. Is that good, Peter?
Yes, that's fine for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Not necessarily a budget presentation, but an update.
Yeah, more like the programs, what they're doing. Recreation, we usually hear like what kind of programs they've had, how many participants. And, for Council on Aging, it's the same thing. We've had these many, they have their check-in program so that they can, she can say, we've had, 6,000, people participate in our COA programs. Just something like that would be really great. This is a program overview. I think it's helpful. Okay. Next item. And the other is, the next item is any proposed budget adjustments, any other comments on the budget from other pieces that we need to follow up on. that we haven't talked about yet. We still have other budgets, but. Anne Marie.
Do you have any idea when the schools are going to be presenting their budgets? Are they close?
That's usually, I'm going to say not the March 4th, but the other March. What's the other March meeting?
Well,
I
they always
think-
have a public budget meeting.
Yeah, but they do that before they come here.
They do it on that first Wednesday in March usually.
Right. So I forget what our schedule says in terms of, and I can't get it on my email because I didn't download it. But it would probably be that second when we should let them know that we're expecting them, and that whatever that mid-March meeting is.
Okay.
We should let Upper Cape and Bourne Public Schools know that Marlene, that we're expecting them to present at that meeting.
We have a
And
March
I forgot who
18th.
went first last year. Whoever went first last year goes second this year.
It was March 18th. I'm looking at the schedule, so it
Yeah.
would be March 18th. We're not meeting on the 11th. Well,
Right.
but we can talk about that at the end.
And we rotate who goes first. No preference. Okay. All right, then discussion CWMP and watershed permits. I think this was pretty much a placeholder. If anyone had any follow-up comments. Anne Marie.
Hi. So we're preparing for fall town meeting, correct? Is that the goal?
Yeah, right now. I mean, right now, the period of comment is extended to February 24th, so we won't even get the comments from DEP until I think it's like a week or 10 days after that.
Right.
So we can't do it for this
Right, I know.
spring.
Right.
So yeah, so we're looking at that
I think
time
one of the
period.
Okay. So after that, obviously, we'll have some more additional outreach to the public as a select board as we navigate the next steps in preparing for what will happen in the fall town meeting. At what point do we start talking about final decisions in the plan and looking at like informing the public about numbers? Because a lot of people are starting to ask questions about numbers. And I'm just trying to get my head around an easy way to answer questions with respects to how much is it going to cost the town and how much is it going to cost me, right? A lot of people are concerned about that.
Right. So I want to talk about two things. In my conversation with Dave Vieira this past weekend, we did talk about two aspects of funding that he and Dylan Fernandez are looking at. One is legislatively to look at the septic, the tax rebate for septic systems and for sewer connections that was capped at I think $8,000 a year. It's a total of like 40,000, but it's 8,000 a year. And one of the things that they're talking about is somehow looking at making that not a refundable tax credit, but a non-refundable tax credit. The difference being is if you don't owe $8,000 in taxes, how are you going to get that money back? And so they're working with some legislation on that. Falmouth is drafting a letter that they've asked the select board to review and think if we would write a letter to support. So we will be having that conversation. What's the other issue on? And I think that there's the other issue has to do with DOR, and if we're going with septic systems, not spending public property on private land and what kind of workarounds there can be with that. So when it comes to numbers, there's a lot sort of in the mix. And I feel that we need to get the comments. We need to see what comments come from our plan because it's out there and people are sort of paying attention now. I mean, we've been doing this for 3 years and people didn't really pay attention. So now they're paying attention. And the comments are ranging from like, I don't want to do IA systems, I want to do sewers, to like, what's it going to cost? How are we going to do it? So I think my understanding of the process is that all those comments get put into their certificate that I give us, and then
Right.
we have to make responses to those comments.
Right.
So there'll definitely be public outreach, especially as we try to work through the comments that people have made.
Okay.
So the other thing is in our workshop meeting with the MIPA analyst, Maggie Leary offered to come and talk to us.
Yes. Yeah.
So I
From
did
DEP.
follow up with her with an email. I don't have email right now, so I don't know if I've heard back from her, but I will follow up on that also because it's really become key to me to understand with DEP the enforcement issue around watershed versus non-watershed.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a difference between the current Title V, the way there is enforcement, and what it would be?
Right.
And I think there may be. So I think we need DEP to really clarify that with us. So I will keep following up on that.
Okay.
I think that's really important.
That was my other point. Again, having some more clarity with watershed versus non-watershed.
Right.
And
so it may be, I mean, once we get the comments and sort of whatever the comments are on what we filed, trying to have that conversation with DEP, it might be best if they come and talk to us after the comments so that we can sort of hash through what the comments were and what their reaction is. So that's kind of where I'm going with it.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Does anyone else on the board want to say anything? Because Keith has his hand up and wants to comment. I mean, I think the point was made that more public outreach is going to be needed. And I think we're just going to have to continue to talk about what our public outreach is going to look like. So Keith, you have a comment?
Yes, I do, MJ. Thanks for letting me speak. So I think I'm speaking as the president of the Pocasset Water Quality Coalition. So since the joint meeting and the subsequent enterprise article about it, we are getting tons of comments about sewering and why isn't it being considered. I kind of respond back to people with, I said, well, where are we going to put the treatment plant? And then, I remind them of how long it took us to find a place for the fire station. And, I get back that they're not the same. The fire station has access issues where land is land. So one of the things, and I can provide this to the board if you're interested. So in 2023, the Pocasset Water Quality Coalition annual meeting, our featured speaker was Andrew Gottlieb from APCC. And Andrew spent most of his time after he stopped talking about fertilizer, then he spent the rest of his time talking about, why towns should be doing sewering. And he referred to, sources of revenue and, how, the sewering is more effective than IA. So, it's, we've been, our Water Quality Coalition, we just celebrated our 5th anniversary. This is the most conversation that I've had feedback from any subject we've talked about. My wife and I walk every day. Pretty much one person a day asks me about it. And, it's, I think my concern is that the CWMP, we need to get the CWMP in place. And I just wonder if we, waited, and I'm not pushing for waiting, but it's a consideration that, we go to, the spring town meeting of 26 and do some more work on researching sewering. Can we connect to the base? What other opportunities are there for sewering? And again, I'm speaking for our members. Certainly I would love sewering instead of spending the money on a new IA system, but it's got to be a realistic conversation. And if we're going to try to do the approval at the October or November meeting, we need a major education program to get people to understand what the process is and how it works. People understand that this is a kind of a living document, although most people don't believe it. So again, I'm just, I know the feedback's going to come from the environmental monitor, but I just thought I would, because I'm hearing it so much, I thought it was my responsibility to present it.
Thank you, Keith. I'm hearing it too. Peter.
Yes, thank you. I'm hearing from people too. We're at the point that they're saying, "Oh, if we go and approve it, but then we go back to another town meeting in the future and make amendments to it later." And there are people who spoke to me that are not a fan of that. They rather have this done right the first time. So if this is just as we're going through the environmental monitor and we're getting the comments and we're collecting them, we're having workshops in the future based on these comments. If it's not the right document, then we should go back to the drawing board and amend this document and get it done right the first time before we go to town meeting. Because if it's not the right document, it's going to get voted down. And whatever this plan is going to have direct impact on the quality of life around here for the future. And that includes financial health too, because it's going to be expensive per household to bring bring them into compliance. And people don't have the money, so we have to look at alternatives that way too. I mean, we've been doing this for years now. And it's still a work product document, but I just feel that if the document is not right after we go through the comments, that we should go back and amend the document instead of bring something to town meeting just for the sake of getting it off the list.
Okay, I'm gonna make two comments about some research that I did about what Falmouth is doing. Because there were a lot of people said that we should be connecting to the sewer system that Falmouth is putting in for North Falmouth. Only if you look at their presentation for the Megansett watershed, they're doing IA systems as a geo boundary for the near future. So, but one thing I did notice is that for their geo boundaries, when they're doing their planning for IA systems, they're using 10 and not 19. They're not using the general use IA number of 19. They're using a number of 10. So I think once we get the comments back, we're going to be able to have an evaluation of really where we stand and seriously consider at the Springtown meeting additional funding. We have to look at the contract that we have with EP. What was the contract for? What have they delivered? Is there any funding left? Or if we're going to continue to do more work in preparation for putting a CWMP to town meeting, do we need to appropriate additional funding? So I think these are all questions that we have to think about over the next couple weeks. And we really are going to, as much as the watershed permit discussion is separate from the CWMP discussion, I think we really need to have a handle on the watershed permit and what decisions are we making? So I think that we have a lot of work that we're going to have to do between now and town meeting, and then maybe next fall, and then maybe the year from fall. But we'll just keep it going and keep it on the agenda. Does anybody have anything else on the CWMP discussion? Okay. All right. Was that everything we were supposed to discuss, Marlene, on that? Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that it was on the agenda so you guys could follow up together.
Yeah. All right. That was good. Thank you. Next item is discussion of possible vote on response to the proposed state budget cuts impacting the Cassett Mental Health Facility and the case management services. I made a stab at a draft letter, which I sent out. I can bring it up on a share screen. If people have edits that they want to make, we can kind of edit it on the fly. I have to say that I plagiarized Sheriff Buckley quite a bit in my letter, but I'm not one to reinvent the wheel if someone said it well already. So any comments or questions on this item?
I'm the MJ.
Yes, Peter.
Thank you for getting that draft letter together. I think it's important for this board to get behind this issue because it's going to have a direct effect locally and regionally. And I think that when we go next week to Dave Vieira's forum, that we should stand behind the letter and explain why well, at least I feel that the Pocasset mental health closure is the wrong decision for this region. I mean, especially now where people are having a hard time getting beds, regionally. I know people who have been in emergency rooms and wait 3-4 days before they can find a bed somewhere. I know people that wait years before they can see a clinical professional or a psychiatrist because there are very few that are available and slots don't open up often. Mental health is an issue that through COVID and after COVID, a lot of the younger generation were directly affected, and they're still not. And I know for a fact there are people who have not recovered from it, and there are various other mental health issues. I just think that it may look nice on a balance sheet, but when you start looking at the direct impact for the services in the region, I think it was a poor decision on the Healy Driscoll administration. And in full disclosure, I support the Healy Driscoll administration and what in their programs overall. But when it comes to this particular issue, it misses the mark, just because you're trying to cut money in an H1, first crack of it's the state budget. And again, it's we're Cape Cod Healthcare, and EPI Deaconess and South Coast Healthcare, which is your Wareham Toby Hospital. Just stress to the limits as it is, and then you take an availability of bed and services out of as an option, and you just making a problem that much worse. That mental health should be in the forefront. It should not just be something that is cut, just for the sake of saving money.
Thank you, Peter. Anne-Marie?
Thank you, Mary Jane. Yeah, the letter was to the point. I think one of the things about it was stressed that, we're at a critical time where mental health we should be expanding services for mental health, not reducing services for mental health. And I think that's really what we need to drive here. And like Peter said, it's the trickle down effect, which you alluded to in the letter as well, that, it's not just about the individual, it's about the families, and it's about, the hospitals who are trying to care for individuals, and one individual in crisis not being able to get a bed has catastrophic impact on that one individual. Let alone a multitude of individuals. So I'm very disappointed with the administration in making this decision, but I hope that, it's not a final decision and that our voices are heard and we speak loudly about this issue, especially for our community and the Cape Cod community. So, yeah, whatever we can do. If we all have to sign it, if we all have to show up, should we hand deliver it?
Well, I mean,
I'll
when
go.
I
I'll
spoke
make
with
a
Dave,
trip.
I explained that we did have, we do have a meeting next week. We do have an executive session that starts at 6:30. So I said I could go, at the beginning of the meeting and read the letter and state the select board's response, and anybody's, welcome to come to the meeting and do that the same, but that we really needed to sort of, go on with our business. So
Where was the meeting? Did I miss? Was it?
it's at the Cassett Village Association at 6 o'clock on the 11th.
Right, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, it is at 6. I think the
It is
6
at
to
6.
7:30 was the
Right.
window that they had. So,
Right.
yeah, so it doesn't start at 7, it starts at 6. So, Melissa, you had your hand up, I believe.
That's okay. It was just I was just gonna really just again, you know how much I dislike repeating and being redundant with things, but I think, mental health and wellness, as Anne Marie had said, is critical, especially in these times that we're in right now. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of people struggling. So I was certainly disappointed to read that the administration was closing these facilities. So yeah, I don't want to dwell on it. I just wanted to add, thank you.
And I think it's hard to understand the impact on families and people who are families and that are dealing with mental health, asking them to go outside of the community to get services is, if a child is at the Papa Center in Canton, well, from Pecasset or Bourne, that's a doable commute. You start putting them out in Westfield, then what kind of family support is there going to be for that child? So I think it needs work. So yeah. So, I mean, if you have any edits to the letter that you want to make, or if you're all good with it, I don't know.
I make a motion to approve the letter to form.
Second.
Oh, got it, Jane. Go ahead.
Thanks.
Okay, good. Okay, motion by Peter, second by Jean. I mean, just approve it as presented if you don't have any changes, and if I find any typos, I'll fix them before it goes. Do you want it set up for us all to sign? Do you want them to put the signatures and use the stamp? I mean, it's probably, yeah. I mean, what do you want to do?
Yes.
I'm fine with the stamp.
All our names down and use the stamp,
Yeah,
I believe.
okay. So signed by all and use the stamp. Okay, all right, so we have a motion, a second. Is there for any further discussion? Seeing none, it's a roll call. Anne Marie,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
MJ, yes, 500. And then we can coordinate on like who's gonna go next week and how it's gonna happen, so that's cool. All right, then. Okay. Next item on the agenda is proposal regarding a standing building committee. Marlene.
So I put a proposal in your packet for your consideration and for discussion. I've given this some thought, and especially given some of the building projects that are potentially coming in the next few years, I do think we have to talk about a logical and realistic way to manage all of those so that the town has high quality buildings that you're proud of at the end, and that the departments are able to function in efficiently. And one of the things that I really want the board to just have some discussion about is who is identified as the responsible entity. And the reason I'm keying in on that is not to have the person who's going to be, the blame is going to be laid at their feet, or not to have the person who's, going to be held, up for flogging if things go wrong. The reason I think this is so important is that if it is not clear who is the responsible party, then it is too easy for one person who's involved in the project to say, oh, I thought you were doing that. And for someone else to say, no, I thought you were doing that. And then you have too many things falling through the cracks. So somebody, whether it is an individual or whether it's a committee, has to own the results, and has to step up and take responsibility for seeing the project through, and has to hold the paid professional consultants to doing, they have to be held to doing their job and performing on their contracts. So yes, the town will have OPMs for these projects. Yes, the town will have architects and engineers for these projects, but there has to be someone from the town itself that is it's crystal clear that this town entity can say, hey, something is wrong here. We need to fix it. We either need to figure out what is the breakdown, or somebody needs to have their contract terminated. And I know this is a very sensitive subject, and I know that not everybody is going to necessarily like this approach, and that is fine. But I think it is the select board's responsibility to make it clear who at the end of the day is responsible for these projects. I think that has been missing from what I can see. That has been missing in the past, and it's too confusing, because if you don't know who's in charge, then nobody's in charge. So the way I've set up this proposal is that there's a feasibility process early on, and then there's a project that is brought before town meeting for construction money. So that is the point where if town meeting funds the construction budget, the project is, after those funds are authorized, the project is moved out of feasibility, and then it becomes the sole responsibility of the building committee. And that building committee does all of the construction projects, and that building committee shall be responsible for all work relating to those projects. Now, that needs some discussion. That is a lot of responsibility.
Okay, any comments from the board? I reserve my comments till after other people have had a chance to speak. Anne Marie.
It It is. And I look at the format, 3-year overlapping terms. For consistency, I really think that's important. And I think the whole concept of a standing building committee has a lot of value for a community, especially one that is going to have several projects more than $1 million in the near future. My concern is, right, the responsibility piece is huge. And how do we balance that with volunteered individuals, right? Making decisions on very large projects. And the responsibility that falls on, us as a select board, or giving the directive to the town administrator and the assistant town administrator. So I think in concept, it's a great idea. And I mean, I would love to be able to establish this type of oversight for the town. I think it's going to be a little difficult with respects to a commitment for 3 years with that type of responsibility and accountability.
Anybody else? Peter?
Yes. I think it's a great first step. It's something that I think will make life easier, for the staff, the town administrator and the staff all the way around, by having some defined roles with a permanent building committee. It'll make things more efficient. I also think that this goes back to when we had Jonathan Nelson as facilities director when we were building the DPW. We had a point person that was a professional and spoke on the town's behalf. And we have a foreman, that does it now, and we have Liz who's doing a great job. But I think this is why we need a facilities director, because the townspeople are going to be putting a lot of money into these new projects moving forward. If it's a fire station, ISWAM, building facility, a wastewater treatment facility at some point, a new library. I think that long-term, a facilities director as well as this committee will make things run more efficient. And so this way there's less stress on the town administrator, moving forward when he or she has someone that's what they went to school for, that's what they work with. So I think this is a good first step, but I also think we should be thinking about redefining the facilities department and maybe getting a facilities director on board when these projects, may not be in this budget, but in the next few years, see if it's feasible to put it back in the budget so it makes these projects successful. Thank you.
Anybody else? So I did a bunch of research. I looked at, I particularly liked Weston, their permanent building committee, and they had some process things. They have a bylaw that lays it out, and so it's pretty detailed. I looked at, I think, Sharon, Wakefield, Weston, Wellesley, to try to see like the different ways that committees done it. Weston, actually, their building committee is appointed by the school committee and the select board because they include schools in it. I think we have a school building process, and I don't think I'd go there. I think the way this proposed that the school building process is the school building process, and don't mess with that. I think the projects that we have coming up are enough for a town building committee, and we don't want to add anything more. I did not like the feasibility two-step in the way that it was drafted. I feel the building committee has to be more involved in that, and I would refer to the Weston how we do it right kind of thing, getting that building committee more upfront. I do think there is a place for feasibility in the programming of what a building needs and in why the building conditions, like why they're not satisfactory. So I think there is, and I think one town called it like an advisory from the proposing department or committee. So I think there's ways to work that in to make sure they have input, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable with a feasibility committee if they're in the way it was first laid out. I think if there's another committee, that it should be a joint appointment with the select board. So select board and library trustees, or select board and community trustees, those were too well laid out. I think the select board and I think the building committee have to be earlier in the process, and the roles have to be well defined. I think the building committee should be part of designer selection in terms of, especially for the OPM, but also for the architect. I think those are the people with expertise, and you put your proposing department people or your proposing stakeholders as like temporary or members of the committee for voting on that project only, and you have a couple different liaisons. And I saw how this was done, and I can share some of the links to some of the research that I did, so you can just kind of look. I think that the planning piece and getting people on board is really important in the planning part of it. And then it really goes to the construction building committee. But I think that those proposing groups, one thing I read where one of them, that if there's budgetary decisions being made, that advisory group gets input on what those changes are, so that they can kind of have the input on the program changes that might have to happen due to budget cuts. So I think we definitely need a permanent or standing building committee, especially with the projects we have coming up. I think we have to really think about who's on it from when, and who should be responsible sort of going forward. So that's kind of my thoughts.
My question through MJ
Yeah.
is, if this does go forward, I'm assuming that the Southside Fire Station Building Committee has been grandfathered, so this will be for any new project moving forward. I mean, especially since they're the ones doing the groundswell of the work now to get ready for town meeting.
Well, I think they're going to go to town meeting. I don't think that committee is going to stand as the building committee for going forward. I think that committee needs to have more construction expertise, lawyer expertise. I think it's been an enthusiastic committee for trying to get the project going. But I think if you have a committee of 7 people and 5 of them are fire department supporters, then it's not giving you the expertise that you need for a permanent building committee. And some of those people can maybe go forward as members at large on the permanent building committee, and they're certainly welcome to attend meetings and participate. But I do not see them as being any committee being sort of grandfathered at this point. Because one of the points is having too many committees. I mean, if we have some of the committees say if it's a construction project over $1 million, it has to go through the permanent building committee. This didn't set any parameters in terms of cost. But if we have an ISO building, a fire station, and
actually, I'm sorry to interrupt. It does. It does. Undertaken by the town of Bourne with an
$1 million. Okay, it does. I forgot. I read a bunch of them. So okay. So it's $1 million. Yeah. And I think, people may be disappointed that they're not continuing on the committee, but I think that we need to flesh out more in terms of what the responsibilities of the building committee are, like how they oversight and how they approve things. And I think we need to really think of it almost to the level of a bylaw. And I don't know if we can get ready for a bylaw for this town meeting, but I think we have to think about it in that way. Jean?
Yes, I would agree. We do need a standing building committee, and as the presentation comes forward about the past experiences, police station, watching the finance committee last night and hearing all the explanations, it's definitely something we need. Responsibility is going to be huge, and it's going to be a very important committee, and we really have to think about professionals and a point person and that sort of thing, so there isn't any communication, there aren't communication hiccups. I think having members at large, people that have been involved in the past, we need to keep working on what that would look like, but at least being engaged and having input would be really important. So people have been working on this for a long time. And so I think developing these roles and responsibilities, this is a good starting point.
One thing I'll mention, this kind of goes to your point, Anne Marie. So a lot of the building committees that are set up, there are 9-member committees, and some of them are associate members. So it's kind of like the planning board and conservation, that you're an associate member that might have to stand in. So I think that kind of looking at some of how other communities have done it, I may even attempt to watch some of their meetings so I can understand how they operate. I think that would be helpful to me.
What was the average number of committee members?
7 or 9, and some of them were bigger. And then when they had an advisory committee, one community let over 25 people be in the advisory committee for something. So you have to, I think that's a lot, but I do think that figuring out how it's going to coordinate, because you need those people. So you need the library trustees to be really involved in it, but
right.
I don't think they're the right entity to decide who's going to be the feasibility committee and who's going to do, who the OPM is going to be, or whatever. I think it has to be balanced, and that designer selection process. If you've gone through designer selection a couple times, it's a lot easier than if it's a whole new ball game to you and you don't understand it. So, yeah. So do we want to, how do we want to move forward with this? Do we want to suggest edits? Do we want to have people look at other things? Do we want to do a workshop on this? Where do we want to go with this?
I'd like to look at some of those other towns, or maybe, I don't know, Mary Jane, if you're going to watch any, I'll watch them too if I can catch them, but perhaps we can do an outreach to someone in Weston from the committee who might want to give us some feedback. And
so I made a Word document with some links to like the different committees, and some of them are robust and some of them are not. Lexington's another one. They're so I think there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it out there, and I think, I don't know, didn't have a chance to look at MMA to see if they'd had any, best practices on this kind of thing. So, and there's things that I like and things that I don't like that different towns do. So I think it's a matter of kind of getting a sense of what you think would fit in Bourne. But I can send the Word document with the link so that people can kind of like,
thank you.
Not have to look it up and kind of peruse.
Okay.
And we'll put it on another agenda, and just everybody think about what you think. Okay.
So can I ask one question?
Sure.
Really, so I can understand workload and expectations is the direction of the board a bylaw for May town meeting?
I'm gonna say no. I think it's too late to do it. I think we should be thinking in terms of a potential bylaw for the fall, but I think we need to get a structure, but think of it in a bylaw kind of structure. The purpose and the responsibilities and as I'm saying, there's a couple of bylaws out there where they lay out all this stuff, and it's the format and what they include, I think, is important detail. So it may just be the charge of the select board has the responsibility for this, but I think we should think about it in a bylaw type format in terms of laying out the charge of the committee.
But not necessarily a town meeting article.
Yeah, not necessarily. I feel that that would be, it's late to try to do that for meeting with bylaw, and unless it just comes together really quickly. But I don't know. Well, how do you feel about it? Do you think it would be better or not? Is it worth the effort to try to get it at this town meeting?
Well, if that is what the board wants to do, then we have to talk about what resources are going to be dedicated to that process and how to organize that process. But if that's not what the board expects, then it's a question I need to understand as far as workload and resources go. Do you expect a bylaw for May town meeting?
I don't.
I don't
think it would be
it's
difficult.
feasible. Yeah.
I think it would be difficult to do a bylaw for town meeting. I think that going into town meeting and telling town meeting that we're planning to have a permanent building committee, and this is what they're going to be doing, is something that would be important. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be a bylaw unless it all comes together fast. So I do think we have to have an explanation for town meeting that this is the direction we're going in, if it is the direction we're going in.
So I guess my follow-up question is, does the board eventually expect this to be a bylaw? Not in May, but in the fall or a future town meeting. Is your track a bylaw, or is your track a select board charged committee?
I think it's too early to say through the chair that we want to do our due diligence and see what the other communities have done, and then as part of the workshop to make that decision in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
I do too.
I think
deeper dive
unless you've looked
to
at the different
balance.
things, when they have a bylaw, when they
Right.
don't have a bylaw, what's the difference? How does it work?
Right.
I think we need to be able to give a cogent explanation, but not necessarily a bylaw. And I'd actually like to see, because I'm pretty sure there was a standing building committee bylaw in the town of Bourne. I'd like to see what that was and when it went off, because I'm pretty sure there was.
Was it a standing building committee or was it a designer selection committee?
I think it was a standing building committee.
Was it?
Yeah. But
Not
I don't know.
that
It was a lot. It was back in 2000, I think.
It
I don't know if it's been, I don't know.
We
in the last 20 years.
originally the library first go around was a designer selection committee that came and interviewed and appointed the architect for the feasibility study.
And that was more of that was a standing committee.
They were a standing committee, and they were called. I thought they were called the designer selection committee.
It could have been what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually, having had a numerous building project things, when I look back at the first designer selection committee that I sat on as a member of a building committee or school committee, I think I feel that I didn't have the expertise to ask the right questions at that committee. I think when I was on my third or fourth designer selection committee, I knew better how to hone in on what I really needed to know. That's why I'm concerned about that piece of it not being into the permanent building committee. All right, so we'll have this on the agenda again, and the select board's going to do some homework, and then we'll have next time we discuss it, we'll have a better understanding about answering your question, Marlene. Okay.
Sure.
Sounds good. Okay, next item is discretionary DRI referral for 829 Scenic Highway. Additional information requested by the Cape Cod Commission.
MJ, I do believe I should recuse myself from this conversation.
Okay.
Okay. And the only way to do that would be to log off. What's next? Just the.
All right,
town
well, let's
adminis-
do the town administrator's report.
Perfect.
Thank you. I actually have a very short one tonight, just one item. I want to let everyone know that the planning board will be holding their public hearing for their zoning articles on February 13th. So they are anticipating 2 zoning articles for a town meeting, the downtown district sign by law and the multifamily housing for section 3A. So there may be some interest in both of those, and the hearing will be February 13th.
They're both hearings on that date?
Yes.
Because I read in the newspaper about the MBT zoning, and the way I found out I didn't have email is I went to write you about the select board knowing when the zoning articles were for public hearings were for anything that was going to town meetings so that we could participate early in the process. So this is like perfect.
You don't even need to email me.
See? Yeah. Well, it got deleted anyway because it said you can't send email and your email's gone. So
we'll get it fixed.
yeah, that's good. I am interested, and it's good to know that that's the opportunity to have that input.
February 13th.
Okay. Is there anything on Melissa, is there anything else you might want to participate in? Do you have any future agenda items related to correspondence or other items for future discussion?
No, I think I'm okay. I am going to be just as a for a note. I will be meeting with Steve Philbrook and some folks from the Bourne Historic pretty soon. We're trying to coordinate a date to start rethinking about the seal. So other than that, that's okay.
That's good. I have 2. I think we're going to do the NALOC, the knock boxes, like in our next agenda. I think it's on the draft for that or something. I would like some comments from the fire and police, whether they have any comments or concerns about that.
I have written comments from police, fire, and health for you.
Oh, great. That's perfect. And what was the other thing I wanted to say? Future agenda items. Oh, so and we can discuss it later, but we've gotten a lot of letters from select board, all letters, and it's not our correspondence yet, but it will be next week about this, the Pecasset Scallop Bay Marina, and I'm just not sure what our jurisdiction is. So I think the board's going to need to understand, like, and apparently we do have standing because we're in a butter having a town marina. So just for some future agenda, and maybe we can talk about it next time after it's in correspondence, like what our jurisdiction is and what we could even do about it. So I have no idea. Okay. All right. So I think then we can go to
Do you want to do the minutes
the
before?
minutes. You want to do the minutes? There was something in those minutes. I can't remember now. Is there a motion on the minutes of January 7th, 2025?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Who was the second?
Melissa.
Melissa, thank you. Motion by Peter, second by Melissa. Any further discussion? Let's roll call vote. Anne Marie?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
I'm going to abstain because I think there was something that I felt needed to be corrected, but I'm not sure what it was. So it's 4-0-1. All right, then.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Okay.
So I included a piece of correspondence in your packet regarding the discretionary referral from the Cape Cod Commission. and they are looking for additional information on a number of areas from the regional policy plan. And these are not things that I can necessarily, I don't have studies about these. I don't have factual information that I can give them. So my question is, if the board wants to continue to keep these policy areas in your discretionary referral, how do you want to provide additional information? Or if you don't want to provide additional information, or you don't feel that we have additional information to provide, do you want to amend your discretionary referral to remove these policy areas? Would you like me to list them?
I was trying to pull up my packet so I could look and see exactly what they were.
Yeah, I have them.
So some of them I don't think are necessarily that applicable to this project. But some of them might be. And I don't know how much information we need to say. Like, for example, housing, affordable housing. I mean, I would say, like, evaluate whether it fits into the Cape Cod Commission's, goals for housing and affordable housing. Community design. I mean, do we have to give them a lot of information, like how we want it to look, or how much information do we have to give them?
So the way I understand it is the board needs to identify or explain why you think there's Cape Cod Commission jurisdiction for these areas. So what is it about these particular areas that you're objecting to, or asking the commission to review under their regional policy plan?
Amory?
Yeah, I think I read it as why the particular project proposed for that site has a negative impact in those areas, right? And so I would think, like, yeah, I don't think it applies to all of them. I don't think, like, I would take out economy. I don't know. Maybe we should amend the
We know what's in there that
the
we did,
discretionary
but they
referral.
accepted.
Like some of these I think we can defend based on, coastal resiliency, things like that, waste management. I think we have, I mean,
MJ, I'm sorry. There was a question in there. Are you looking to see what regional policy areas that they are not questioning and that they have?
Yeah, yes, I'd like to see, what are they not questioning? Like, what are they right now, if we were to say, forget these, what would they be reviewing?
Okay. Give me 1 minute. Let me find that. Sorry to interrupt, Anne Marie.
That's okay. I just think it might be if we could ask them specifically what they're looking for. Like, are they just looking for a summary, or are they looking for specific data source that we have or don't have? I'm not quite sure when they said, provide support about why, it believes a project has regional impact in each issue area of the RPP under which the agency maintains that the project will have a regional impact. What's support? I mean, is it just a summary? Because I'm sure we could talk at length about each of these things, right? But are they looking for specific data points?
So they're looking for a justification for this particular project, some sort of data or some sort of opinion about this particular project on why it's creating a negative impact in these areas. So they're looking for you to make your argument about why you're saying these areas are being harmed. MJ, I did find the total list. So if you think it would be helpful, I can read the total list and we can see what the commission has agreed is.
Yes, let's see what that is.
Okay. So water resources. So they've taken that one.
Yep.
Ocean resources, which
Yes,
they're questioning.
Yeah.
Wetlands, wildlife, and plant habitat, which they've taken.
Yeah.
Open space, which they've taken.
Yeah.
Cultural heritage, which they've taken. Economy
is on the no.
On the no. Housing
is on the no, right?
Yep. Community design
is on the no.
Coastal resiliency.
Yep.
Capital facilities and infrastructure.
Yeah, it's on the no.
Transportation, which they've taken.
Okay.
Energy, which they're questioning. Waste management, which they're questioning, and affordable housing, which is being questioned.
Okay. So we have transportation, cultural heritage, open space, wetlands, something and something, open space, and water resources. Yeah, those are the ones that they're looking at.
Yeah, wetlands, wildlife, and plant habitat.
So on this project, this is like just under 10,000 square feet. So that's why it wouldn't, go. But this project is I'm pretty sure this is in an area that we changed the zoning for. We gave this some sort of special zoning that I don't recall what it was, but I don't know. Whether that would have an impact in any of these. Community design, maybe. Is it okay if I take John York's comment and then the board can think about it? John, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. In considering what the Cape Cod Commission is looking for and why the town wants them to review this, I think you really want to look at the full power of the Cape Cod Commission. For example, affordable housing, you had phrased it, we need to tell them what the negative impacts would be. If the developer is claiming positive impacts, and you want some qualified planners to review the developer's claim and come up with their own metrics of the benefits for affordable housing as a check of the developer's claims, that could be a role the Cape Cod Commission could function in. So it's not that there's necessarily negative impacts to affordable housing, but it's a review of the developer's proposal. That's what a DRI review is. So that's a skill that the Cape Cod Commission has planners who are skilled in that, and they do this for many projects. So that's one example of under affordable housing. It's not that you're claiming a negative impact, it's you want the power of Cape Cod Commission review on this development of regional impact. Another example, so that's one thing you should think about for any of those categories. Is the developer going to be making claims that we want the Cape Cod Commission to review? So you could just explain to them under affordable housing, we want you to review the affordable housing because the developer is making claims of having this much benefit to affordable housing, and we want you to review that. I believe that's correct. Check me on all of this. Don't take my word as, I'm any better than anybody else's, but I think that's something you should consider. And also, there are whole categories of subject matter that the Cape Cod Commission has purview over that nobody else does. And that's another reason you want to refer something to the Cape Cod Commission. For example, they're charged with preserving the educational value of resources on the Cape. Now, for example, if this is impacting that herring run, that's a natural resources value, that's an ocean value, but that's also an educational value of the existence of a herring run that should be thriving and might be, but that's a dying whole ecosystem in the Northeast. Herring runs are being lost, they're not being gained. And I've brought groups to Carter Beal to watch the herring run and to watch the young herring coming back down, something a lot of people don't look at. If that's going to impact that herring run, that could have an impact on educational resources. As far as I know, the Cape Cod Commission is the only regulatory authority who has the ability to question a project and even put limits or bounds on it because of its impact on educational resources. So I suggest you read the Cape Cod Commission Enabling Act and look at the resources and values they're supposed to be preserving in preparing a response to them to say, here's a value we want you to look at. So that's just two different examples of ways that you could provide justification. One is you want them to review, it's not necessarily a negative impact, but you want their review of a claim of a positive impact. And secondly, you want them to review in the categories where they are unique in their ability to review and regulate a project. Thank you.
Okay. It's a helpful comment. So I do think that under ocean resources and coastal resources, that we want the Cape Cod Commission to review the project due to its proximity to the herring run and the negative impacts that could happen on the herring run. So for those two categories, I would say the herring run proximity. And I would say for affordable housing, community design, and economy, I would say review the proposal to verify that the proposal provides positive outcomes for affordable housing, community design, and the local economy. I don't know if we need to say any more than that, but if they want more detail. And the other ones, capital and infrastructure is okay. I'm not concerned about energy. I'm not concerned about, yeah. That would be my response. I don't know if that's sufficient for what they want. Is that good for everyone?
That was the point I was trying to make earlier. Is it just, is that all they need, or is it specific data points and of information? I don't know. I mean, the whole purpose of the review is for them to review the project and to
I
answer
think we
those
just say,
questions.
I think we specify the proximity of the herring run for the ocean and coastal resources, and then just say that we want them to verify.
Right, we do want it to be.
They're, to make sure that it's providing positive benefits, sort of going off of John York's. And if that's not enough, they can say they're not going to do it. And if it's enough, then they'll do it. Is that good? Do you need a motion, or is that consensus?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, because you previously took a vote to include.
Okay.
So I do need a vote to amend your previous vote to remove capital facilities and infrastructure, remove energy, and remove waste management.
So move.
Second.
And then do we need to give them something that says why we want them to do the other ones that they questioned? I mean, that statement that because due to the proximity of the herring run and.
Why don't I draft something? Why don't I try to draft something up for your next agenda, and you can actually have something in front of you to vote?
Okay, that sounds good. That's good. So we have a motion and a second, right, to remove those three things, and then for you to draft something else. So it's a roll call. Anne Marie?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
MJ? Yes. 400.
And then, Madam Chair, just one last point with this one.
Yep.
They have told me that the commission will be discussing it tentatively. It's penciled in for February 27th at 3 p.m. I have a conflict and will not be in attendance, so I don't know if there's a board member who would prefer to go.
Is it a Zoom or is it in person?
I don't know. I haven't heard back yet.
All right, let's make a determination on that next week. And we'll discuss that. People can look at their schedules and we can discuss it next week if anybody wants to go. We did minutes. Any committee reports? Correspondence?
Correspondence, February 4th, 2025. A, Commonwealth of Massachusetts letter regarding MBTA communities law. B, Bourne Substance Free Coalition NAILOX box request. C, U.S. Department of Interior letter regarding Beach Act. D, Mass Historical Commission review, CWNP. E, Cape Cod Commission letter regarding DRI mitigation funds. And F, T. Swanson Constable application cover letter.
Great. Next meeting, February 11th, and then March 4th and 18th. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Anne Marie, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Jean.
Yes.
Roll call vote. Anne Marie,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
MJ, yes. Peter,
Yes.
400. 9:23.